all of our cells have all these other little clocks, and everything runs on a system. And here's something shocking that probably most people don't know how damaging it is when you do not get the appropriate sleep you need, one, and you don't sleep on the rhythm you should, two.
Today, we're going to talk about energy and supplements. And we're going to be discussing some really fascinating topics, from what supplements you should be taking to jack up your performance throughout the day. But as I was speaking to our guest speaker, we also realized that we have a common interest that is also worth adding to this, and that is, what supplements should you take when you are post a plant journey, whether it's Aya or whether you're experimenting with peyote or shrooms. So if plant medicine is exciting to you, this is going to be a hot topic. If supplements or boosting energy or metabolic performance or cognition states throughout the day fascinate you, this is important. The supplement industry is a $36.2 billion industry just in the United States. Yet no one knows who creates the ingredients that power the industry or how they work. On top of that, we all could use different ways to source energy. Like me, I drink coffees throughout the day and take different supplements, but I'm sure that with a little bit of knowledge, I could do things better. So what if there was a formula to maximize your daily energy while overcoming exhaustion and basically crushing it at work and at life? So I want to introduce you to someone. He's got a peculiar name, and that name is the ingredientologist. And that is because he has formulated over 500 supplements, food and beverages, and cosmeceuticals, and patented 10 novel ingredients. Now, his name is Shawn Wells, and I first met Shawn because I was organizing an event in Sardinia, and I was having dinner with Ben Greenfield, one of the fittest human beings alive. And Ben Greenfield said, "Vishen, if you ever want to understand supplements, this is the man to talk to." And he had brought Shawn to the event, and Shawn and I ended up having dinner. That was probably in 2018. And so it's so interesting to reconnect and bring Shawn back on the Mindvalley podcast. So Shawn Wells is a leading nutritional biochemist and expert on health optimization. He has counseled thousands of people on natural health solutions such as keto, paleo, fasting, and supplements. He has overcome several health issues, including Epstein-Barr Virus, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, depression, insomnia, obesity, and pituitary tumor. He has 2 internationally distributed documentaries, 20 plus scientific citations, 30 plus patents filed on novel ingredients, and 500 plus products formulated. And if that's not enough, he's appeared on 700 radio shows, 300 podcasts, and made over 1,000 media appearances. So today, we're going to learn about Shawn's energy formula. And I'm holding up Shawn's book right now. For those of you who are impatient and want to dive into his work, the book is called The Energy Formula, and you can get it from energyformula.com. And that's exactly how it's spelled, energyformula.com, which, by the way, I was just telling Shawn, is the most beautiful author book site I have seen in the last 2 years, at least. So check out The Energy Formula. The book is called The Secret Only a Biochemist, Dietitian, and Certified Sports Nutritionist Could Know by Shawn Wells. 6 life-changing ingredients to unleash your limitless potential. So Shawn, welcome to the Mindvalley podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Vishen. It's great to reconnect.
Super excited to have you here, Shawn. And today we're going to talk about some key ideas from the book. Specifically in the book, the subtitle is called 6 Life-Changing Ingredients to Unleash Your Limitless Potential. And what I was hoping we could do is have you first, in the first part of this, give us an idea of what these 6 life-changing ingredients are. And then in the second part of this podcast, we want to talk about supplementation in combination with plant medicine. Does that sound like a plan?
That sounds perfect. Let's dive into it. So right out of the gate, experiment is the first chapter. An experiment dives into bio-individuality, that we are all different. And in this book, I talk about the things that I do, but I also mention what science says. And I also mention it's important for you to do what your body tells you to do through genetics, through blood work, through testing of the different diets and your compliance. Like, what is your lifestyle? What will you be compliant to for the rest of your life? So we're looking at all of these tests. I go through the three most important ones for anti-aging, which I love to talk about because it's all about mitochondrial health, which is about cellular energy. And that's at the core of the energy formula. So there's three tests that I really love that I go through in the book. There's hemoglobin A1C, which is a longer term indicator of blood sugar. And glycation is glycation's a vehicle for aging, blood sugar damage, etc. We know that most diseases are metabolic in nature, right? That they're not things that you're just born with. Like 99% of diseases are metabolic. When we talk about cardiovascular disease, cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all of these things are metabolic in nature and have a lot to do with insulin levels and glycation, this blood sugar damage. So hemoglobin A1C, CRP, C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker, again, glycation, inflammation. And then the third thing that I like to look at is oxidation via oxidized LDL. These three markers give you a really good snapshot of your biological age versus your chronological age. Gives you a snapshot of your disease potential and your health span versus lifespan. So it's a great chapter.
Shawn, so quick question here. These tests, is there a particular service or website that you suggest people use to get these three things tested?
You can go to any lab service that's a straightforward lab service in your town. You should be able to walk right in, like LabCorp. Those are ones that I have used in the past. It should be fairly easy. And for those three labs, we're talking $150. And those are things that I would look at maybe, once or twice a year. And you have, again, a really good snapshot of what's going on with your health, your aging, your vitality. I mean, how high functioning your mitochondria are.
Just a couple of questions on these experiments. So firstly, this is really cool because a lot of people have spoken about supplementation. A few people I've had in the podcast have said, okay, there are certain tests that you got to do that are going to give you a pulse check on how you're doing health-wise. But after we do these tests, how do we read the data? How do we understand? You said these three tests are a great indicator of our chronological versus biological age. How do we understand the data?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because there's always within normal limits, right? And, I worked 10 years clinically as a chief clinical dietitian, and it's similar to the discussion around with vitamins deficiency versus optimized levels. A lot of what we look at is deficiency and not necessarily optimized. Like, how much does it take to optimize you? And when you look at a lot of these labs, within normal limits just means you're not sick. So it's not necessarily like ideal levels. And that takes like further interpretation, like working with a functional or integrative medicine doctor. That's what's going to help a lot. With your hemoglobin A1C, it's pretty much as low as it can get. It sounds crazy, like there is within normal limits, like, less than 5 is ideal. But it does seem like the lower that we can get insulin and therefore blood glucose, that the longer you live, the more growth factors, the more growth hormone you have, the less glycation damage that you're doing. It's just been shown time and time again that the lower the insulin is, the better you're off.
Oh, that's amazing, Shawn. This is really, really, really cool. So can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to have my assistant schedule this for me tomorrow.
Great. Great.
And
Okay.
I could just got to figure out here in Estonia where I can get this tested. If any of my listeners here happen to be in Estonia and have a recommendation, please message me on Instagram. I would love to know. Now, let's go on to the second piece of the energy formula.
Okay. So that is nutrition. And people that know me know that I've done keto for about 20 years. But I do a metabolic flexibility version of it where I do cyclical and targeted ketogenic dieting. And I eat a largely paleo diet, so whole food focused, avoiding things that are inflammatory. One of the key things here that you may not know that I'll bring up that could be, shocking is how much these omega-6 oils are in our food supply and how inflammatory they are. If you think about things like canola oil, which we were told is super healthy, it's in all the foods at Whole Foods. Canola is actually called rapeseed oil, and it typically gets highly oxidized when they process it. So it actually turns black, it has a bad odor, it's completely oxidized and pro-oxidative in terms of damaging you. And what happens is they add deodorizer to it, they add bleach to it to make it look palatable and taste palatable. But this is a highly oxidative oil that's used throughout our food supply. And then when you add things that are high glycemic, like the sugars, the maltodextrin, the starches, all these things that are in there, it's a double whammy for inflammation. Eek. Oh my God. It really is like it's unprecedented because these are ultra processed oils and ultra processed carbohydrates, and together they're pro-inflammatory, and it puts our body in a systemic state of inflammation, our brain in neurological inflammation, and it's more aging. Just the oils alone are more aging than 2 packs of cigarettes a day.
What? That is amazing.
Yeah. And we're eating all these highly processed vegetable oils and told that they're healthy.
So what is the oil we should be using?
The oils that you want to be using is leaning more in the 2 other directions towards saturated fats, like the omega-9s. So things like coconut oil, MCTs, things like that, butter, ghee. And then on the other side, you want omega-3s, things like fish oil, flax oil, etc. And if you use things like olive oil, those are amazing, but don't use those under high heat. That's where they can get damaged. So things like olive oil, I like to add to salads, things like that. And things like butter and coconut oil are what I like to cook with because they have a high smoke point and they're not going to oxidize.
That's interesting. So we shouldn't be cooking with olive oil.
Correct.
Okay. So with cooking, so that's really something I'm taking back right now. I make my 4-egg omelet every day with olive oil. So you're saying don't cook with olive oil. You add olive oil onto a salad, but what you're saying is use coconut oil, or what else could be used for cooking?
MCT oil, coconut oil. Yeah, MCT does come from coconut, Tiffany. And then you can also use things like butter, ghee, stuff like that.
That's amazing. Thank you. So that's something I learned right now that I can immediately apply and shift in my life. And I want you to have that attitude as you're listening to this conversation. In fact, have that attitude as you're going through Shawn's book, The Energy Formulas. You can see these little things can make a massive difference. And what you're going to find really great about Shawn is he gives you all the evidence. He gives you all the data. Like I said, this is a guy who has 20 plus scientific citations and 30 plus patents filed on novel ingredients and 500 plus products formulated. So this guy knows his stuff. Okay, so we've covered experiment, we've covered nutrition. What is the third category?
So exercise. We're jumping into exercise. And in the book, I go through some of the hottest tips to really maximize your time in the gym, to maximize hypertrophy. Things like blood flow restriction. So this is also called katsu. BFR. And I don't know if you know what BFR is, Vishen, but I can give I know this is recorded on Spotify, but we're on video at the moment. And I can show you, like, it's a cuff that goes around, for example, your bicep, and it holds at about 7 or 8 in tightness. So you're cutting off venous blood flow, but you're not cutting off arterial blood flow. So it's tight, but it's not too tight. And what happens is you get cell swelling. This is so cool because it's like doing 4 sets of 10 reps, a couple reps in. So you're just forwarding yourself to what would be the super pump, and I can't take anymore, and the lactic acid, oh, it's killing me. Like, you're getting there right away with this blood flow restriction. And when you add things like drop sets, supersets to it, you're getting a lot of fatigue on the muscle, and you can cut your workouts literally down to like 10 or 15 minutes. There's one more that I really like to do called intraset stretching.
Wait, just before you go off katsu. Okay, so I've been hearing about katsu. In fact, I was just hanging out with Ben Greenfield and he brought up katsu. He mentioned, hey, you got to look into katsu. And so it's so nice to have you mention katsu again. So let's say we have a regular workout that we really like, right? Let's say it's 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, and we use a concept like katsu. What, if you had to estimate, what percentage efficiency would that workout go up?
Massive, like literally, like 50%. It's literally
Really?
it's so massive
50%?
because look, it's all about getting to this point. There's actually a Z line that's in the muscle that has to do with eccentric movements. And there's also sensors in the muscle for how much cell swelling there is. And it's like, this is like just fast forwarding your workout to that, 10th rep on the 4th set. Like when your muscle's so overpumped, it's so swollen, you can barely continue, but if I get one more rep in, that's the one that's going to make the difference. It's the last rep of your set, and it's certainly the last rep of your last set, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's where the muscle's
that's the one that's going to make
fatigued.
the difference. Right.
And that's where time under tension comes in too. And if you can keep a movement more controlled and more under tension instead of bouncing at the bottom, bouncing at the top, then that's good. But there's a new idea that's also called intraset stretching. So in between, let's say you're doing that set of curls, in between sets, when you're resting for 30 seconds, let's say, you flex your triceps as hard as you possibly can. And at this point, the bicep is fully stretched. Okay. And you've just been doing curls. And so the biceps have been working. And now you're fully stretching the bicep by flexing the tricep. And then you go right back into your next set. So the bicep is always being fatigued. And it's just an exhaustive exercise. So you add blood flow restriction, intraset stretching, drop sets all into the same exercise. And in 10 minutes, you're going.
That's fascinating. Now, intraset stretching, does that happen if we're doing, say, bicep curls? Bicep curls, we do one set of bicep curls, and then we move to do one set of tricep pull downs. Then we go back to the bicep curls, then back to the tricep pull downs, and we alternate. Does that qualify as intraset stretching?
No, you would literally want to flex out the competitive muscle, and so that you stretch out the muscle you're using as fully as possible. So for bicep,
so if we're doing bicep curls, we want to stretch
flex your tricep like as hard as you possibly can. Flex the tricep
30 seconds.
Yep.
For 30 seconds. Okay.
And then go back into your set. And if it was triceps, then you'd want to flex the biceps.
Flex the biceps. Right? I see. Okay. That's so interesting. That is so interesting. So alternate sets, you don't recommend that?
I do. That, like, the supersetting concept is great in a bigger picture. But if I was like really limiting time, I would take one muscle and just hammer it.
I see.
And that's where I would go. Instead of like the superset, I would probably do a drop set. So like, think about like, if you're in a machine with a cable, you can just keep dropping the pin, right? So you can just go right back into the next set and just keep dropping the weight until you can't get one more rep. And if
That's
you're
in
doing blood
between
flow
each.
restriction,
Right.
yeah, if you're doing blood flow restriction, intraset stretching, drop set, your muscles will be toast in like 5-10 minutes. Like
Okay, that's
your
incredible.
workout for the
I
day is done.
I cannot wait to test it out in the gym next. That's going to be really, really, really interesting. So we have covered experiment, nutrition, exercise. Now, of course, guys, what Shawn is doing here is he's giving a key idea from each of the 6 principles in the book, right? So if you're finding this interesting, like already katsu, I am going to go invest in some katsu bands. This sounds amazing. So if you're finding these tips interesting, imagine what you're going to get if you dive into the full book. Okay, so now let's go on to principle number 4, which is routine.
Yeah, so routine revolves around circadian rhythm. And this is our sleep wake clock. We have an internal clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, that actually is like the master clock for our body, but all of our cells have all these other little clocks, and everything runs on a system. I mean, if you think about like the Rolex watch with all the gears, it's your body's like that, and it's meant to run on the sleep wake cycle. And here's something shocking that probably most people don't know how damaging it is when you do not get the appropriate sleep you need, 1, and you don't sleep on the rhythm you should, 2, you live 30% shorter lives. 30% when they look at shift work displacement syndrome,
Wow.
so meaning people that are night shift workers, when they're bucking the circadian rhythm trend, then they're living 30% shorter lives. We're meant
Wow.
to wake up with the sun and go to sleep when it's dark. We're not meant to be eating at 10 o'clock at night. We're not meant to be being jacked up by Game of Thrones or a football game or, whatever it is late at night. We're not meant to get all this blue light in our eyes late at night that's preventing the melatonin release so that we can get into our sleep cycle. We're doing things that are counterproductive. Dr. Sachin Panda's data is so good around this, like even timing your meals only during the daylight.
Wow. This is fascinating. So what are some tips that we can immediately walk away from based on this concept of routine?
Yeah, so I believe that you should, 1, do intermittent fasting. I think that's
Okay.
best for me. So I avoid eating first thing in the morning, and then eat lunch around noon or so. But I'm also done by 6 o'clock. If we're talking about the winter, you can eat a little later for me. I have a longer eating window when it's the summer. But I'm only eating with the daylight. So that's worked highly effectively for me. And fasting, even with Epstein-Barr, is a question. Yes, fasting has helped me elevating ketones. So fasting is one way to elevate ketones, as well as the ketogenic diet, as well as depleting glycogen with exercise is another way to elevate ketones. So ketones are going to help with autoimmune issues. That's one of the ways that I dug myself out of Epstein-Barr is
Wow.
using some of these techniques that I'm talking about.
That's fantastic, Shawn. This is so intriguing. Okay, so I fast every day for about 16 hours. I'm a big fan of fasting. On Mindvalley, we have a program called Beyond Fasting, and that's really what did it for me. So I fast, and I'm just so in love with it because it transforms your energy, your clarity. Once a week, I try to fast for about 20 to 22 hours. Now, my question to you is this. I was interviewing Stephen Gundry on this podcast, right? The Dr. Stephen Gundry, amazing guy, and he writes about energy and health, and his books are incredible, just like yours. And Stephen said something which seemed a little bit controversial. I told Stephen, Stephen, the only thing I don't like about fasting is if I finish my dinner early at night, when I'm sitting down and watching my favorite Netflix movie and just chilling out, and I want to have a glass of red wine and I want to eat my favorite snacks, pistachios, is that going to break my fast? And Stephen said, actually, no. He said, in fact, both those things are healthy in moderation, and they will not break your fast. I don't know about that, and I wonder what you think.
I believe those are breaking your fast, but You know, that there's some complexity to that when people like worry about, what's breaking a fast. Like, I think there's some absolutism, like, you run into on keto boards that they're called the keto police. And then there's the fasting police. And they're saying, what breaks a fast? Does this bone broth break my fast? Does having an electrolyte drink break my fast? Does having coffee break my fast? Does all of these things, MCTs, does that break my fast? I hear about that all the time. And like, I wonder, like, what's the reasoning behind that? Because for me, one, if like say having MCTs or exogenous ketones is going to give you energy to keep going, to fast longer, then that's more productive for me. Like that is ideal. Like if because you had that one thing, you can go another 6-12 hours on an extended fast, that's amazing. Do that. Like, don't worry about whether it's breaking the fast. I mean, there are some elements of like autophagy getting maximized, this cellular detox. But at the end of the day, like to me, the most important part of fasting is the willpower that it creates to show you that I can go 16, 24, 48, 72 hours and be alive and thriving. When people are telling me I should be dead on the floor, when people are telling me I need to eat 6 meals a
That
day.
is amazing, Shawn. That's
Yeah.
amazing. How long do you do something like a 72-hour fast?
I do it once a quarter. I do a 72-hour fast.
I
And
see.
then I do daily, I do intermittent fasting with like a 16 and 8.
I see. That's great. That's great. So you must be like 84 at this point. How old
Exactly.
are you? How old are you?
I am 47. I'm 47,
Okay.
but I
Well,
look
you
very
look
young
great
and I'm
and
proud of
fit
that.
for
So yeah.
47.
Yeah. Thank you.
So okay, so that's fascinating. Now, so basically, you are not giving me permission to chew on pistachios and drink red wine at 9 p.m. as I'm watching Netflix, are you?
The red wine, I don't know. And for sure, like yeah, it depends. Like there's actually something called a fat fast where you can just
Hmm?
focus on fats purely. There's even things like egg fasts, but I think ultimately I would just keep the fast as clean as possible for you, but also not be frustrated with yourself if you have something and it keeps you in the game, no matter what it is.
Got it. Got it. That's great. Thank you. So now about your habits. Okay, so you say you stop eating at 6. So I'm curious here. If so, after 6, if you are going out with friends, if you are socializing, or even not just sitting with your children and watching a movie or going to the cinema, so you're only having tea or water.
Correct. Yeah.
No
Correct.
alcohol, no snacks, nothing. Okay, that's amazing. That's
Correct.
amazing discipline.
To me, that's the most important factor of fasting is literally like it can be done.
Yeah.
Once you do and you go from intermittent to extended fasting, you can see that you're capable of incredible things. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so mind-boggling for most people to go 72 hours without eating. And when you do that and you feel energized, like you can do anything. That's the thing. You feel
Yeah.
like how much other stuff out there that seemed impossible can I do? And that's what I love
Right.
about fasting.
Exactly. Like I just did when I first heard about fasting 1 year ago. It seemed really painful. And a few weeks back, I just fasted for 24 hours. Um, and it was a piece of cake. It was an absolute breeze. No hunger, no drop in energy. Um, I was training myself for it, of course, with Ronan Diego, who's a fasting instructor on Mindvalley. But I was amazed at how easy it is. The desire to eat, hunger pangs, they just don't hit you. And so now, if I'm going on a big trip and um, I know I've been socializing a lot. I've been going to dinners, elaborate dinners, or eating like airline food, and I come back. I try to fast for about 24 hours.
That's amazing. That's so great for that autophagy. And that actually goes into what we're talking about with the circadian rhythm reset too. When you fast, it allows your circadian rhythm to find normality, especially like when you're training or your sleep is off.
Absolutely,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
that's
and
perfect.
that's one of the ways I also completely overcome jet lag. So I don't really experience jet lag much anymore as well.
Exactly. That's exactly what they tell you to do because yeah, when you have a meal, it throws off your circadian rhythm, especially like, for you and I that travel a lot across many time zones, that can really throw off your
Right.
circadian rhythm. You want to wait. It's actually counterproductive. There's a number of studies on this. Like while you're on a flight, you shouldn't be eating. You should be
Mhm.
fasting during that time, and then pick the time in your new time zone when you should eat.
And tell us about fasting and fat loss. What are the
Yeah.
correlations there?
Yeah, I mean that, and that's going to be so important that you're metabolizing fat, right? And what happens is during fasting, you're elevating BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate, the key ketone, and it's going to be allow you to protect lean body mass. That's one of the reasons why, for the most part, in fasting, we don't lose much
Mhm.
muscle mass and we metabolize fat mass, is because BHB is actually anti-catabolic. And so it protects lean body mass. So the deeper we get into our fast, the higher this BHB level goes, and it protects that lean body mass. And we're preferentially using energy from fat. And that makes sense. Our body is so well adapted to survival, it's going to protect the most important tissue, which is muscle mass. And it's going to tap into where there's plenty of energy, typically, is fat mass primarily.
This is so useful. This is such incredible information. So we just covered principle number 4, which is routine, right? And if you guys are paying attention, you'll notice that number 1 was experiment, that's an E. Number 2 was nutrition, that's an N. Number 3 was exercise, that's an E. Number 4 is routine, that's an R. You can guess that number 5 is going to start with a G, and number 6 is going to start with a Y. It's going to spell energy, right? So that's a preview if you've been paying attention. So we're going to get to 5 and 6, but first I want to ask you a question, Shawn. Let's talk about exercise and routine combined together. If we are doing high intensity interval training, how do we incorporate fasting? Do we still do the 8-hour window of eating rule if we are trying to put on muscle?
The fasting, intermittent fasting window, I would say, like, you have to look at hormetic stresses. Let's take a step back. So hormetic stress is stress that's a positive stress, a U stress, EU stress, and it has to do with allostatic load. That's your stress capacity in the body. So it also gets referred to as your stress bucket. Some of us have larger buckets and smaller buckets. The larger your bucket, the larger your stress bucket, the larger your allostatic load, the more capacity you have for hormetic stresses. But there is a point when even things that are hormetic stresses, things like cold plunges, fasting, keto, red light saunas, working out at the gym, whatever, they can be too much if you're maxed out on your allostatic load, and they can become a distress. Something that should be positive can be a distress.
Mm.
So what I like to look at with your training and with your fasting is that there's a baseline for that, so that you're not going above and beyond in both. Meaning,
Right.
like, you're not
Okay.
reaching for new highs while you're fasting, and you're not going for new lengths in your fasting. If you want to
Mm.
continue to incorporate the training and the fasting together, it's enough to do those two together. That's a
Got it.
lot. That's a lot on your body. So I wouldn't be reaching for new PRs, but I would
Mhm.
be, feel good about doing the two together. And that is a positive hormetic stress that you have adapted to already.
That's great. That's great. That's really good advice. Okay, now let's go on to number 5, which starts with G.
Yeah. So growth, this is getting into growth mindset. And I know you just had Ryan Holiday on, and I get into
Right.
stoicism. This whole book, The Energy Formula, is about resilience. And again, kind of growing, that's going back to that stress bucket, allostatic load. It's about growing that bucket, being harder to kill. We used to not be so temperature controlled. We used to, where we're, at the same temperature all day long in our car, in our office, everywhere we go, it's temperature controlled. We used to have to deal with extreme hot, extreme cold. We used to have to go days without eating sometimes. We used to have more stresses physiologically that we don't now. We're so controlled that our bucket has gotten so small. We're easier to kill. And that's why it's important to do these hormetic stresses, to do things like cold plunges, to do things that improve our resilience. And stoicism, the obstacle's the way, like your friend Ryan Holiday, and that's the type of thinking that's resilient thinking. That's the type of hormetic thinking. And in an essence, like is, I'm not overwhelmed by this idea of the obstacle. I don't want a life without obstacles. I don't want the shortcut around the obstacle. I realize that the obstacle is in fact the way. And that is like when you get to one of the most key mindsets of people that are successful, and that's reframing. Everything is working on my behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a lesson. I'm either winning or I'm learning, which means I'm winning or I'm winning. And that's a huge part of the book, is just getting into all these concepts that revolve around resilience and making us harder to kill.
I love that. I love that you address it that way. And I love that you brought up stoicism. So now let's go on to the final item, which is why your tribe.
Oh, and you know this one. I mean, you guys are so good at this with Mindvalley, creating community. We met in Sardinia, which is a blue zone, which is something I talk about heavily in this book, especially in your tribe. One of the biggest things about blue zones is that there's community and connection. And if you look at the Harvard study that's over 80 years running now, the #1 determinant of longevity, they looked at socioeconomic status, cholesterol levels, everything they could possibly look at, all the genetics. What they came up with, the #1 determinant of longevity is quality of relationships. Right. So it's so critical, and it's something that we play down. We need to be very intentional about the people we're putting around us. That goes back to Jim Rohn and Tim Ferriss and all these people that talk about who are the 5 around you, and you're the product of those 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
It's so critical. And then to have purpose, I believe, is the difference maker. You see a lot of people when they retire, one, they lose the connection, they lose the friendships, right? They're not seeing people as much. 2, they lose the purpose of going in and doing something and being accountable for something, having a reason to get out of bed. And when you lose your purpose and you lose your connection, you get old. And so that's one of the keys to staying forever young and being in these blue zones like Sardinia, where people are super centenarians living past 100, is having community, having connection, and having that great tribe, having those great friendships.
Yeah, in all of the blue zone studies, you find that in many of these cultures, people were not living in suburbs where you had to use a car to drive somewhere. They were living in environments where there was a town square, there was a community space. Remember when we were in Sardinia, like how like everything in Sardinia was designed in areas where the community could come together. There would be little town squares. There would be beaches that were shared beaches, and there's this beauty about European culture in particular that helps create this. I don't see it as much in the US, but at the same time in the US, there are things like churches, seminars, workshops, and studies have shown that, for example, even the community that you get from church or from going to mosque or from going to temple, that also in some ways helps extend your lifespan. So as long as people are coming together, we are almost like a healing force on each other. So I love that you cover that in the book.
Yeah, same with pets, actually. Pets show longer
exactly.
life, right? So that's another form of connection, right?
So I just want to use this opportunity to remind people of, or just share with people something that I'm currently working on. So I'm currently working on, with my team, we have about 100 engineers working on the back end of Mindvalley, and we're working on a really big project. It'll take a while before it shows, but it's going to happen this year. But it's basically an AI algorithm that will understand who you are and then suggest who else in the Mindvalley community you should connect with. So you'll get to choose, okay, I want to choose people in my industry, or I want a mentor, or I want a lover, or I want to find romance, or I want a close friend. Oh, I want someone who can help me grow. And we will predict who you should connect with based on an AI algorithm that we are currently patenting. So that's going to be released in a new Mindvalley platform. And in July, those of you who come to Mindvalley University, which is our biggest event, it's 2,000 people in Tallinn, Estonia, 3 weeks, 300 sub-events. We are racing to build a technology. When you show up in Tallinn, it will know enough about you and it'll say, Shawn, these are the 5 people you got to connect with. And then we're going to play this little game where you got to find those 5 people among 2,000 people. And we are so excited because we are finding that it's feasible to predict who one will become close friends with. And when you can deliver a close friend to someone, that is the greatest gift you can give another human being.
Agreed. That sounds amazing. I want to experience this.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. I've been playing with the beta algorithm, and it's really interesting. It's predicting to me Mindvalley members that I need to connect with. Now, Shawn, let's go on to the next topic that we were going to discuss. But before we go there, I want to give a big call out to your book, guys. I interview so many authors on this podcast, and so many books are wonderful to read. They're wonderful to read. They're entertaining. And they give you new ways of looking at the world, and they give you new beliefs. But sometimes an entire book covers one topic. It just covers one topic. And at the end of it, you have that new insight, but it's not life transforming. Now, Shawn's book, The Energy Formula, is life transforming. If you just listen to the advice he gave you in this podcast, he's probably added months to your life. For example, I just learned something from listening to Shawn. I learned that I've been using olive oil wrong, and I need to switch to butter, ghee, or coconut oil. I also learned that there are 3 tests that I need to do immediately to accurately be able to see the difference between my chronological and my biological age. I also learned that I need to be looking at katsu bands if I want to increase my workout efficacy by another 50%. That's pretty freaking amazing for just a short conversation. Now imagine what the book can do. So I want you to go to energyformula.com and order the book there. And yes, you can order it from Amazon, but by going to Shawn's website, here's what happens. If you order the book from Shawn's website, there are a couple of live Q&A bonuses. He's going to give you a fasting guide, Fasting for Energy. That's a really interesting bonus if you really want to go into fasting. And then Shawn has this mystery thing called the hidden chapter. So, which I think I'm sure it's going to be epic. And this is the book. I'm holding up the cover right now for those of you who might be watching this on YouTube. The Energy Formula, 6 life-changing ingredients to unleash your limitless potential. Okay, now for the bonus topic, Shawn. And I want to get this because I think this is going to be so intriguing on our Instagram channel. So I'm sitting here with Shawn Wells, and Shawn Wells is one of the most remarkable minds in the world when it comes to supplements. He has 30 plus patents filed on novel ingredients, 500 plus products formulated, and he's made at least 1,000 media appearances talking about this topic. And I'm getting Shawn's advice on what are these supplement stacks that we should be paying attention to when we're about to go on a journey. And then what should we be paying attention to when we come out of a journey? Now, that journey could be psilocybin, it could be ayahuasca, it could be something that you're taking to experience a music festival. We leave it up to you, but you're about to hear some really intriguing advice, and you definitely want to take notes and start preparing a shopping list before you go on your next journey. Shawn?
Yeah, that's great. I love that setup. And this whole presentation, by the way, I have this goes into a lot of length about psychedelics. This is at shawnwells.com/stacks. And I go into all the different plant medicines, things like adaptogens, why they're so important. I go through Paul Stamets' microdosing protocol and I one up it. And it's a great protocol, but this is, if you guys aren't microdosing, it's something to definitely explore in terms of performance. Anxiety, it's done incredible things for me as an anxiolytic. I've honestly experienced nothing better than doing microdose psilocybin when it comes to anxiety and a feeling of like, brushing things off like it's no big deal. I get in a much better headspace that allows me to be more creative, more in the flow. I get into, blood flow, hydration, neurotoxicity, CBD, which if you haven't studied the endocannabinoid system, I mean, this is just one of those things. Like, we have people that specialize in neurological and muscular and bone and the liver and all these different things, and that's great. But this endocannabinoid system is known as the master controller, the master system. It controls inflammation, pain, mood, the immune system. And it's crazy to me that there isn't a lot of knowledge around the endocannabinoid system. And so, CBD is just one of many cannabinoids that we need to study, but we're seeing profound effects when we do plug in certain cannabinoids like CBD, that mood can be stabilized, that pain can be stabilized, that immunity and inflammation can be stabilized. So I get into neuroprotectant supplements, supplements to support serotonin coming back online, acetylcholine, which is a key neurotransmitter kind of at the foundation of most nootropic stacks. So this is all in here, but I want to get to like kind of my summary of these ingredients. And then, like I was talking about, I think one of the biggest ways that psychedelic stacks actually work is that ketones are elevated, especially when you've done things like fasting, going into the journey, right? That's typical. Like when you go back through history, like people were doing many day fasts and then doing this plant medicine journey, this holy experience. Well, the deeper you are in that fast, the more elevated your ketones are. Those are neuroprotective. Those also help with neuroplasticity. And those are turning on your brain cells that prefer ketones for fuel over glucose. So that's one of those things that I'm studying, that if there's ways to further improve ketogenic levels, that you're going to further improve neuroplasticity and brain healing in the plant medicine space. So adding things like glucose disposal agents, things like metformin, berberine, dihydroberberine, doing things like high intensity interval training to glycogen deplete going into it, fasting, like we talked about, the ketogenic diet, exogenous ketones, C8-MCTs. These will be all ways to boost ketones and improve neuroplasticity and brain healing in that space. So these are my stacks. If you're looking at the screen, this is pre-journey. So I'm setting the table. So definitely hydration gets talked about a lot. We're definitely dehydrated going into most journeys. You want magnesium. About 80% of us are deficient in magnesium, and it's related to about 250 different reactions in the body. Muscle strength, regularity in the gut, brain health, bone health. There's so many things that immune system that magnesium is related to. Adaptogens. This goes into things like maca, rhodiola, ashwagandha, ginseng, lion's mane. These are adaptogens. They help us normalize and regulate. What happens there is you're getting a greater resiliency. You're improving that stress bucket. You're becoming harder to kill with these adaptogens. They're the most legendary herbs of all cultures, like maca in South America, rhodiola in Russia, ashwagandha in India. These are the legendary herbs because they do everything. When you optimize your body, you improve your stress resilience, you function better. You have a bigger stress bucket, allostatic load, and you are harder to kill. So you can get better sleep, better focus, have more energy, more muscle mass, better sex. Like all of these things are related to these adaptogens. So I'm a big fan of using those, and that will help normalize your stress levels going into a journey. Prepping your serotonin by doing saffron, which modulates serotonin. D3, vitamin D3 helps. And then SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, is something that you want to use as well. And then this one is really fascinating. You may have heard about lion's mane for neuroplasticity, but there's one called 7,8 dihydroxyflavone that literally, there's a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that's associated with neuroplasticity. And that's a key component of doing a journey is one, ego dissolution, and two, being in a neuroplastic state where you can learn things, you can rewire the brain more easily. This 7,8 dihydroxyflavone is superior to actually injecting the protein BDNF itself. And I've never seen something like this in supplements. So you want next level neuroplasticity, you want to be resilient in the brain, you want to learn new things more quickly, like all this Mindvalley content that's amazing, take 7,8 dihydroxyflavone. Next up is B vitamins, but getting the right forms, the methylated coenzymated version. So for B12, that's methylcobalamin. For B6, that's P5P. For folate, that's 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So it's the active forms that don't need to be converted. And then lastly, pre-journey, I like some supplements that revolve around mitochondrial health, which is PQQ, CoQ10, and ergothioneine. Ergothioneine is actually being studied as a new vitamin, and we have unique transporters and storage for it in our body. And this is unlike pretty much any other ingredient I know of, maybe other than iron. Like, this is like so fascinating that we were evolved to need ergothioneine. It actually protects your mitochondria on that level, which is amazing. So you have this unique transporter for it, and then unique storage system for it. You have a deficiency of it, so it's being studied as a potential new vitamin. Really cool. During the journey, I don't do a whole lot. I do hydration, electrolytes, magnesium, B vitamins, a little bit of theanine to relax a little bit more if needed. But that's it. I don't want to get too complex with too many things going on during the journey. And when I say pre-journey, I mean the days leading up to it. I'm priming my body. And then peri-journey means intra-journey. So just, anything that I would have in my water bottle. And
Got
then
it. So pre-journey,
yeah.
pre-journey would be like, say, 2 to 3 days before the journey.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
peri-journey would be what you'd have in your water bottle or what you would take the morning of the journey?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And then lastly, post-journey. Now, this is about similar things, but it's about bouncing back. So we have our B vitamins, again, those active forms, electrolytes, magnesium. Then we have things that help bring serotonin back online. 5-HTP is okay to use now. Saffron, D3, SAMe, Zembrin, which is an extract from Kanna, which is a natural SSRI, serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it helps bring serotonin back online in combination with these other ingredients. Antioxidants now would be ideal, things like glutathione, NAC, vitamin C, and NAC is N-acetylcysteine. Things that elevate ketones, again, keeping that neuroplasticity up, extending out what happened in that space so that during your integration, that you can stay in a space where you can continue to make changes and evolve. And I think that's key with keeping your ketones elevated. And then the next one too, elevating BDNF itself through lion's mane 7,8 dihydroxyflavone. And the ketones get elevated again by doing glucose disposal agents like dihydroberberine, by taking ketones or C8-MCTs. And then neuroinflammation is something that I look at as a potential, like you've put a lot of stress potentially on the brain. It's opened it up, but it's also good to potentially reduce some acute inflammation. So CBD, curcumin, tetrahydrocurcumin. And then getting back into the adaptogens, helping normalize your stress levels, helping you, again, bounce back, come back online, feel more resilient. So things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, and then getting acetylcholine back online, the neurotransmitter, by having things like acetyl L-carnitine, which is an acetyl donor, alpha GPC, which is a choline donor, and that's helping you make acetylcholine. And so that is the stack. And
so
then
just a question,
yeah,
just a question, Shawn. Could you go back that slide?
Yeah.
Go back to that slide. Okay. So the question is, when you put a slash, right? Does it mean, or for example, rhodiola ashwagandha? Is that rhodiola or ashwagandha?
Yeah, it's one or the other. That's fine.
One or the other. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can take glutathione or NAC or vitamin C. Perfect. That makes sense. Right. And if you had to, because this may be a long list for a lot of people, if you had to recommend the top 4 on this item for Postjourney, what would you say that would be? The top 4 and the easiest to get.
I would say that the electrolytes, the Zembrin is actually that might be surprising, but as an SSRI, it's going to like make your normal levels of serotonin come back online much faster.
I see.
I would say that 7,8 dihydroxyflavone for the neuroplasticity, and then rhodiola or ashwagandha as the adaptogen. Those would be my
so 5-HTP, which is the most common one, didn't make the list in the top 4. Because I guess Zembrin is more effective, right?
It's more effective, but I love the stack of the two, because if you're making more serotonin with 5-HTP and then you're keeping it around longer with the Zembrin, that's a win.
That's amazing. All right, let's go on to the next topic.
Okay, so microdosing. Now this gets into like, how am I like doing this over the days and months? Like, how am I maximizing my performance? How am I improving my productivity? That's where microdosing sees a lot of benefits. So like LSD, psilocybin, things like that often get microdosed. You feel more creative, more productive in those spaces. Again, I think it helps you get out of your monkey mind, if you will. So having, magnesium, B vitamins, again, elevating ketones with dihydroberberine ketones, C8-MCTs, keeping your neuroplasticity up with 7,8 dihydroxyflavone, lion's mane, adaptogens. Now creatine is something I like, which helps with brain function, helps protect how the brain works, and methylating. Methylation is extremely important for DNA and for the brain and protecting it. Fish oil having high DHA. Race hams, so these are like nootropics that kind of gray market, but my favorite one is Nupept, which helps the brain function at a higher level. CBD and cannabinoids, we talked about the other ones that are coming out now to the market, CBN, CBG, and now there's new peptides, things like dihexa, cerebrolysin, which improve neurological function. I take both of those, and then there's some of these other compounds that reduce inflammation and improve healing. So BPC 157, thymosin alpha, TB 500, those would all help. And then exosomes, V cells, and other biologics. So those are getting used in these environments as well. Like, getting into a microdosing space, but then adding renewal to your body through biologics of things like exosomes.
I see. So this is the stack we would take if we were microdosing LSD or psilocybin or any other type of medicine. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and
this is great.
One thing I've been working on too, I want this to become a worldwide protocol and accepted practice, is the mushroom that you do on your journey, that you take that exact mushroom, that exact strain, if you have really good facilitators, and you make that into your microdoses in the next 6 to 12 weeks following your journey, that the exact mushroom you journeyed with is now part of your next 6 to 12 weeks, so that you are in a more neuroplastic state while you're trying to integrate, while your facilitators are leading you post-journey, keeping you accountable, which is the benefit of microdosing. But in particular, it's the exact mushroom you journeyed with. And
Mhm.
we all know that like a journey song, like a song that is, heard during a journey when you're having an epiphany, a great moment or a laugh or whatever it is, that song can really hearken in your body, right? Like you
Right.
can have that somatic response. And so when you hear that song outside of the journey, it can bring you right back into that space. But it's the same thing with having the exact mushroom strain. It's not the same if you have a different mushroom strain. So it actually harkens back to the work you did in your journey. And so I'm not seeing most facilitators follow up with microdosing, and I'm certainly not seeing them use that exact strain that they served in the journey. And I would love to see this become part of the protocol because I feel that there's a lot of benefit to be had by going through that process of that exact
This is
strain and the
this
facilitator working with you.
this is amazing, Shawn. But this is also a lot. There's a lot to take here. Are there any companies that provide aggregates of these specifically for journeys?
There isn't, and it's
I see.
frustrating. And I've been talking to some companies about possibly doing that. Um, so these ingredients are highly beneficial to the brain, to the body, regardless. But
Mhm.
they're only going to strengthen what's happening.
I see.
Um, yeah. So, and
That's
I have these,
fantastic.
like I said, ShawnWells.com / stacks. You can get this whole presentation.
That's amazing, Shawn. Shawn, the next question I have for you is what type of so we can stop the slides now. This
Yeah.
is just a quick question. The biggest program on Mindvalley is Jim Quick's program on Superbrain and super memory, right? That is the biggest number of new people who are coming into Mindvalley. And these programs are the best in the world. Jim Quick, Superbrain, and Super Reading are the best in the world at what they do, speed reading and cognition. What supplements do you suggest we take to boost our cognition?
What's awesome is I'm developing a new supplement line for Jim Quick, and it's going to feature my new ingredient that we have over 45 patents filed on. And it's an energy nootropic ingredient that's a metabolite of caffeine called paraxanthine. And the branded name for it's Infinity. But that's going to be the crown jewel in his supplement line is this ingredient that we're now about 10 studies into. We're seeing that caffeine does not work for most of the population. About a third of the population are fast metabolizers. A third of the population are slow metabolizers. And so the fast metabolizers, I can have caffeine and go straight to bed. The slow metabolizers say, I just get headaches and, I don't feel well. I get arrhythmias. I get anxiety. I don't get sleep. And so they get all the side effects and none of the benefits. There's only about a third of the population that gets the ideal benefit, right? So what we've done with these paraxanthine being the caffeine metabolite is you avoid all that. It works for about 97% of people. It inhibits adenosine just like caffeine. But what it does far beyond caffeine is it's highly dopaminergic. And so what we see is it increases productivity, increases focus. And then we also see this is so funny. Like people talk about swagger all the time on this. And we actually filed a patent on swagger because the word kept coming up so much that you get like this confidence boost from the dopamine being so elevated that people just feel themselves. And our friend, I actually gave it to Peter Kell right before he went on stage to speak, and he's like, I don't know, that was the best speech of my life. Like he was literally doing cartwheels on stage, Vishen, cartwheels on stage. So yeah, it's an amazing ingredient, and then it improves blood flow. We're also
Wow.
seeing too nitric oxide, so it enhances blood flow in the brain and to the muscles. So we're doing training studies with it, but we're
Mhm.
seeing so much benefit. Like that's my exciting nootropic ingredient that I'm just pumped about, and Jim Quick's excited about. So those are some great ingredients that are coming out.
That's amazing, Shawn. Shawn, thank you so much. This has been such an incredible podcast episode. We have to have you back as a guest more. If you guys found these ideas interesting, check out the energy formula energyformula.com. It's energyformula.com. Check out Shawn's book. You are going to absolutely love it. And Shawn, I'm also going to give out your Instagram. You can follow Shawn on Instagram at Instagram, Shawn Wells, ShawnWells. Shawn, thank you so much.